Hi, my name is Sid. I'm on the steering committee of the Vocal Seniority. This meet and greet with candidate for position 2 of the Deschutes County Commission, Phil Chang, is being co-hosted by the Vocal Seniority, Indivisible Bend, and Neighbors for Redmond. Thank you all for joining us. This is going to be a fairly simple and straightforward meet and greet. We'll start with Phil introducing himself, making some remarks, 5 to 10 minutes, whatever he feels like doing. This is his meeting. I'll be acting as the moderator. When he is finished with his introductory remarks and ready to take questions, then we will ask people who have questions to please use the raise hand function in Zoom, okay? You should, those of you who are on a computer, you should see like a toolbar if you mouse down towards the bottom of your screen that comes up, and there's an icon that says participants. If you click on that, it will bring up a participants panel, and in the lower left-hand side of that, you should see an icon of a hand like this that says raise hand. You just click on that, and your hand will be raised, and I will see that, okay? And as people raise their hands, I'll see them in the order they come in. I will call on people in that order, unmute you. You can ask your question. Phil will respond. You can do a follow-up, and then I will remute you and move on to the next one. If someone would rather not ask their question verbally, that you may use the chat feature, also that button at the bottom. If you're on like an iPad or an iPhone, that toolbar may be at the top. In any case, you can type a question into the chat box, and I will just read it to Phil for you if that's your preferred way of asking a question. So, without further ado, I will turn this over to Phil to make his introductory remarks. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Sid, and thanks to all of you so much for joining me here this morning. It's great to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. As you all know, during the time of COVID-19, it's really hard to campaign the way that we usually might. So this is a great opportunity for me to get to talk to people and extend the reach, extend my outreach a little bit. Thank you for being here. My name's Phil Chang. I am running for Deschutes County Commissioner this year. I've lived here in Deschutes County for 16 years, and I've been involved in public service to our community during that whole time. I worked for 9 years at the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, doing sustainability work focused on forests, water, and agriculture, and renewable energy. I worked for 3.5 years for Senator Jeff Merkley, representing our community's needs and interests to Washington, D.C. And then for the last few years, I've been the manager for a statewide program called Federal Forest Restoration that has been focused on improving habitat, reducing wildfire risk to our communities, and creating jobs and producing some wood fiber for industry across the state of Oregon. So during my public service years, I've worked with a lot of local governments, and I learned to really appreciate the role that they play in land use, in public and behavioral health, in county road management, solid waste management, law enforcement, community justice. And so when I saw our county commission going in what I believe to be the wrong direction in the last couple of years, I felt called or drawn to throw my hat in the ring for this office. And when I first started this campaign, my real focus was talking about growth. Deschutes County is the fastest growing county in the state and one of the fastest in the nation. And if we don't grow well, housing affordability will suffer, traffic congestion will get worse, and we'll lose a bunch of farm and forest land in the process, and open space and habitat. And we'll fall farther and farther behind in terms of the infrastructure that we need to support our communities. So growth, wanting our community to grow well was the reason I jumped into this race. But of course, right now, everyone should be asking local government officials and candidates at every level 2 questions in my mind. Number one, what are you going to do to help us respond to the COVID-19 public health crisis? And number two, what are you going to do to help us recover from this, or recover from the social and economic fallout of this event on our community? And so I've been spending a lot of time in the last couple of weeks trying to think about those questions as well. And that's a little bit of background about me, about my interest in this race. And I would love to jump right to questions and maybe get into some of those, get into some of those topics of COVID-19, how do we grow well, and things like that. But better for the questions to come from you than for me to guess on what you want to hear.
Great, thank you, Phil. We have a few people with their hands up, so I'm going to start calling on them. First up, she's been at these other ones and she knew to raise her hand right away. That is Gloria Olson. You go ahead, Gloria.
Thank you, Phil. I wish you would spend just a moment discussing the priorities of the county as it relates to the budget, because the budget is a statement of our values, and refer to the recent budget around healthcare, which we know public health is going to be our primary driver to recovering from or making progress wherever we go with this pandemic. So thank you. If you would address that particular question, please.
Right. Thank you for that question, Gloria. The commission is the overseeing body for the budget for Deschutes County. And that means that they get to make decisions about around something like $250 million worth of funds each year. And again, those funds go into some of the things that I mentioned: land use planning, solid waste management, hundreds of miles of county roads, the county commission also oversees the budget for a lot of the law enforcement and community justice functions in our community. They're not the elected officials who run those programs, because we have judges and district attorneys and a sheriff who actually run certain programs, but the county commission gets to oversee the budget for those areas of county government as well. But most importantly, I think, particularly right now, most importantly, the county commission allocates a significant amount of the budget of Deschutes County to public and behavioral health services. That's one of our largest departments within the county, the health services department, which includes both a behavioral health and a public health division. And back in about a year ago, 10, 11, 12 months ago, the Health Services Division submitted their budgetary request for fiscal year 2020. Because fiscal year 2020 started on July 1st, 2019. I know that, for people who aren't familiar with government budgeting, I know that doesn't make sense. But fiscal year 20 started on July 1st, 2019, and will end in a few months. And so we're part of the way through, but FY 2020. And at the time that the Health Services Department submitted their budget, they asked the county commission to maintain their general fund investment in the Health Services Department level at about $6 million. There's approximately $6 million. And that makes up about 11 or 12% of the total health services budget. So, and that they also said to the county commission that, hey, it's really important to keep our general fund investment level because we have some important needs. One of the things that they identified was that our communicable disease division within the Health Services Department did not have enough capacity to respond to outbreaks of things like the Zika virus or Ebola. They didn't even know what COVID-19 was back in spring 2019 but they knew that they had a deficit of capacity to respond to communicable disease. So they mentioned that. They also said, hey, we have spiking youth suicide rates in our community, and that's something we really need to get a handle on too. 10 years ago, Deschutes County was like middle of the pack in terms of Oregon counties, in terms of youth suicide rates. Now we're at the very top of the list. And I think people are still trying to figure out all the reasons why that's happening. But what we do know is that it's a tragic loss for our community and a huge impact. It's something that needs to be addressed. The third thing that the Health Services Department really wanted to do this year was to stand up what's called a Crisis Stabilization Center. So this is a place where law enforcement officers, either from the city or the county, can take people when they show up at an incident. When these law enforcement officers show up at an incident, and they find someone who's either misused some kind of substance like opioids or is having a mental health crisis. Because without this Crisis Stabilization Center, the default choice for our law enforcement is to take that person to either the emergency room and sit with them for as many hours as it takes for them to get seen in the emergency room, or take them to jail. And these are people who need to come down, or they need to calm down, and they don't need to go to jail. And they don't need to be taking up a lot of resources at the emergency room. They need a place to go to calm down. And so that's the idea behind this Crisis Stabilization Center. So the Health Services Department wanted to do all of these things. They requested level funding from the general fund, from the commission. And instead of getting level funding, they got a 5.4% reduction, $330,000 reduction in general fund investment from the county commission. And this is one of those situations that I think indicates that, it reflects that the current county commission, they say that they want to be fiscally responsible. They say they want to, manage expenditures, but they're being fiscally short-sighted, because all of those things that they could be investing in save us money. Preventing youth suicide saves tremendous cost and suffering on the other end. Preventing your sheriff's deputies from having to go to the emergency room and sit with somebody who's jacked up on opioids for 6 hours till they get processed through the emergency room. It saves us resources. It puts that deputy right back on the street responding to other law enforcement incidents. So they would argue that they are being fiscally responsible by tightening down the budget in all these ways, but I would argue that these are fiscally short-sighted decisions, denying our community the services that they need. A growing community needs growing services.
Can I just add one more comment about this condition? When we start our tracing, at the time that we are going to expect, people want to get back to where they think they're going to be able to go to work again, which I think is important. But if someone shows that they're a positive in this COVID-19, there needs to be contact tracing, and that is a responsibility, as I understand it, the Public Health Division. Now, am I misinformed, or is this also a cost?
You're right on, Gloria, and I'm forgetting the number of contact tracers that the governor is recommending per 1,000 people right now, or per 10,000 people right now. But I do know that of the 6 people who are doing contact tracing in our community right now, most of those are people, are Health Services Department employees from the county. And 4 of the 6 of them are people who were reassigned from other duties. So they're not dealing with the other communicable diseases or other behavioral health challenges that that are their job. They are doing contact tracing right now, and so much of our ability to find people who have COVID-19 and then backtrack all the places and people that they've been in contact with and isolate those people, quarantine those people, has been because of the contact tracing work of our county employees. But we need more of them. I believe it's like on the order, it's like it may be that we need like a 10-fold increase in that to be able to meet the criteria that the governor has set for reopening our community, as well as the curve needing to flatten and a lot of PPE being in place and a lot of testing capacity being in place and things like that. But contact tracing capacity is a key piece of being able to get back to life as normal.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Great, thanks. Next up is Bill Trumbull. Bill, you're on.
Hey, good morning, Phil. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it. I wish I were where it looks like Gloria is, but my question to you, Phil, is late last week I watched a video of the county commissioners as they discussed ways that they might open or contribute to opening the economy. I was not positively impressed, and so I'd like to hear your thoughts, please, on how you think we ought to go about reopening the economy or not, and the role of testing.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Yeah, there was a whole string of action at the county commission last week on this question of reopening the economy. The week started with our 3 county commissioners not making a decision as Deschutes County Commission, but each individually deciding to sign on to a letter by the Eastern Oregon Counties Association to the governor, essentially requesting that they reopen county government. They reopen counties in Eastern Oregon at the beginning of May, and so our county commission thought it was appropriate to classify themselves with tiny little counties like Harney County or Wheeler County. Wheeler County has 1% of the population of Deschutes County, less than 1% of the population. So our county commission thought it was appropriate to lump ourselves together with these other counties who are saying we need to reopen on May 1st. And meanwhile, we have 100 times the population of a county like Wheeler County, and we have vastly more cases than any of these other counties in Eastern Oregon have. I mean, we have over 70 reported cases of COVID-19, which probably reflects that we have well over 600 actual cases in our community. So the governor responded, or the governor has during the week put out criteria, like basically to reopen. I think you need to see these things. You need to see that the number of cases plateau and start to come down. You need to have adequate capacity in your hospitals to respond if there's to absorb the new cases if there's a surge. You need this much PPE in place. You need this much testing happening. You need this many contact tracers, as Gloria mentioned, in place. And you need to be able to demonstrate that if there is a case, it will be detected. That person will be their contacts will be traced back, and then they will be quarantined, so they can't infect anyone else. So the governor put out these criteria, and then the county commission had a special meeting on Friday, basically to demonstrate that. Demonstrate that they had heard the criteria from the governor, and then I think they wanted to show that they were doing something about it, right? So they met, and basically they got in there and they proceeded to just grill the county staff for how soon can you get this done. It's like, the county emergency manager said, we've been trying to assemble all this personal protective equipment and gowns and stuff, and they said, gee, that's great, do it faster. So, I mean, these are professional people who are working 24/7 to get the job done, and the county commission thought it was worth holding a special session and drawing a lot of attention to themselves so that they could tell the county staff, you're not working fast enough, which I think is completely disrespectful, and it's a gross misuse of the public's attention. So to get to your question of what do we need to do, that we need to meet all of those criteria that the governor has laid out for us, and it is going to take a little while. The good news is that the factor that is in some ways hardest to control, like the demonstrating that our cases are plateauing or declining, we're getting there. The curve seems to be flattening in Deschutes County. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to flatten the curve and see a decline in the number of cases, not too far off. And, to the people who are out there protesting and saying we have to reopen our government soon and, you're infringing on my freedom, what we can say is that Oregon has been one of the most successful states in the nation in containment of this disease and flattening the curve so far. I mean, we would have tens of thousands more cases right now if we had not acted early to stay at home, the governor's stay-at-home order. So I don't know what the exact date is when we're going to hit the point where we can start to reopen some, phased reopening. But I know that the governor has set out criteria for us, and I think that they make sense, and that when we meet those criteria, it will be a good time to reopen our economy.
Okay, great. Thanks. Next up is Skipper Lay. Hang on. Let me get you. Okay, I think you're unmuted. Go ahead, Skipper.
Okay, Phil, I'm particularly interested in the. I have a question first. It's kind of a subset question, but the video covered by one of the Bend TV channels was. I saw Phil Henderson. I saw County Commissioner Henderson at the Redmond rallies speak in some way. Can you tell us a little bit about what is, not about him personally, but about his remarks there? That's the subset question. But the other one, and then I'll go ahead and mute again, is our campaign to outreach to the rural, three components: the rural part of Deschutes County, the rancher part, the farmer part, and what we who really intend to be working with you on your campaign can do that too. So a lot of mumbo jumbo questions, but that's first was on the demonstration in Henderson there. And what did he say? I didn't really hear what he said.
Gosh, I am aware that Phil Henderson was at the most recent rally in Redmond, but I actually have not myself, I've seen pictures, but I have not myself tracked down what his comments were there. I won't put words in his mouth, but I do think that the best intention I could attribute to that there are a lot of people who are struggling. They are challenged by having the shutdown in place that we have right now, and we want to show those we want those people to know that we care, that we're all well aware of the suffering and the toll that this is taking on us. But I guess. What I would hope that someone would say that if they went to a protest like that is the state, the governor, the government is not the enemy. The enemy is this disease, and the enemy was completely caught us completely by surprise, and we are doing what we need to do to contain this threat to our community. So I mean, that's I need to find and if any of you can help me with that, get me to a link. I need to find Phil Henderson's comments so I can speak to that. But I mean, the desire to the desire to show compassion and sympathy to people who are struggling because they're socially and economically isolated right now. I appreciate that. I just, I don't think that those folks out there are on the right track. And again, the reason that Oregon has been so successful so far in flattening the curve and in containing the number of cases is because of those stay-at-home orders that we adopted early, and we've done a really good job of adhering to. To get to your second question, Skipper, we have a real urban-rural divide in Deschutes County. People talk about it at the state level and at the national level, but we really do have an urban-rural divide here in Deschutes County. And it closely overlaps, in my mind, with the red-blue divide that we have in Deschutes County. As a person who has worked for many years, I've worked on rural sustainability issues pretty much my whole career. So with 25 or 30 years of working in rural communities, trying to help them figure out how you take care of your landscape, but also make a living. How do we restore our forests so they don't threaten our communities and so they provide good habitats, but also so that they provide good jobs in the woods? How do we modernize irrigation in the Deschutes Basin in a way that keeps agriculture whole, but allows us to put more water back in the river? So these are some of the things that I've kind of worked on, grappled with farmers, with forestry contractors. I've worked a bunch with ranchers in the region, in the Central Oregon region, on juniper encroachment in our sagebrush steppe ecosystem. So I have been there with these folks working on the issues that are important to them, and I'm hoping that because I've been there, I will be able to get some of those people to vote for me. And I literally just on Friday, I got the endorsement of one of the major timber industry leaders in our region, Bruce Doc Savage, who for many years was the president of Ochco Lumber. So I've also received some significant campaign contributions from other forestry contractor friends, and so I'm hoping that me being a person who I'm running this race as a Democrat, which immediately with a lot of rural people puts a target on your forehead, not on your back. But I'm hoping that I can bridge some of that divide through the experience that I've had working with rural natural resource dependent people all over the state, but particularly in Deschutes County. And in terms of how supporters can help me do that, I think that they can be familiar with the work that I've done, and speak to some of their, do a little bit of outreach for me with people that they know who are, rural, maybe more conservative members of our community that are showing the door is cracked, that there's a sliver of opportunity to reach them. One of the other things I've done in the last couple of months, before the COVID-19 shutdown, was I had a little roundtable session with a bunch of hunters in Deschutes County, the Oregon Hunters Association, the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And I got together with these folks and I asked them what they were concerned about. And they said, we're really concerned about habitat. And we're really concerned that the county, this county commission is bent on taking lands that are currently zoned as exclusive farm use and opening them up for rural subdivisions. And there's a long backstory on that. Basically, there are exclusive farm use zone lands that are probably never going to grow crops, but those same lands are providing really important habitat and open space in our community. And so there are other reasons to conserve them, if not to grow crops or to grow timber. So hunters are, hunters, farmers, ranchers, loggers, forestry contractors. These are some of the people that I'm making an effort to connect with. When I'm not running a Democratic primary, I will have more time to make even more effort to get to those folks. But the people, particularly my campaign team, wisely counseled me. Okay, if you need to win a Democratic primary, you should focus on the Democratic registered voters first. So that's a little bit. But phone banking is another way that we can reach these people, particularly like even in a time when I can go door to door. A lot of the people who might be sympathetic to my campaign, who live in the rural parts of the county, they are just too dispersed to effectively go door to door and door to door canvas. So phone banking, I think, is a uniquely effective strategy to reach those people.
Great. Thanks, Phil. So first, in the category of ask and ye shall receive, you asked about what actually happened at that rally, and two of our participants have come to your rescue on that. First, from Liz Goodrich, she writes, Deschutes County Commissioner Phil Henderson addressed the crowd and said he doesn't know how seriously people should take the virus. He sympathized with the frustration that certain businesses have been forced to shutter. And a quote from him is, what I don't like specifically about this coronavirus decision-making, specifically in our state, is that they're basically saying certain jobs you're no longer free to do. So that was the quote that came from her. And then secondly, from Nancy, she included a link to Friday's rally. And you don't have to worry about finding it in the chat. I'm gonna send it to you afterwards so you can get more information on that. Before I call the next person, some other people have come in a little bit late. I just want to make sure everybody understands, if you have a question for Phil, if you open up your participants panel, look down the lower left-hand corner of that panel. There is a raise hand icon. Just click on that, raise your hand, and you will be in the queue for asking questions. Next up in the question queue is Steve Cross. And Steve, you're on.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chang, for meeting with us. I'm going to lob you an easy one. How do you separate yourself from Mr. Henderson? Likely you're going to win the Democratic primary based on how you stack up the other two opponents. How do you separate yourself from Mr. Henderson?
I would separate myself from Phil Henderson both first in terms of style. Phil Henderson is not a lot of people have questioned his intelligence. I do not think that Phil Henderson is an unintelligent person. I think that Phil Henderson is an extremely ideological person. And that causes him to filter all sorts of information that people are feeding to him if it doesn't align with his belief system. So I've watched a number of county commission meetings at this point, and I've seen county staff say things to him, and if it doesn't align with his ideological position, it just kind of goes right past him. It's like, this session I watched where focused on homelessness in Deschutes County. I mean, people, the county staffer who besides providing homeless services, also is the co-chair of the Homeless Leadership Coalition of Central Oregon. She said to he said, I understand that there's a couple percentage of these people who are, domestic violence survivors, mental health issues, whatever. But the majority of these homeless people, they're there by choice. They're choosing to be homeless. And she said to him, no, the majority of these people report that they are unable to pay rent, or they are no longer able to live with a family member that was previously housing them. And then, 20 minutes later, she gives him the information. And 20 minutes later, he says, these people are doing this out of choice. They're choosing to be homeless. They're like, and then he went off on some weird analogy to how they were like pioneers and, who settled the frontier and stuff like that. But so there's like an ideological filter, is the first thing. The second thing I would say is that Phil Henderson is because he has this ideological bias, there are people that he just doesn't want to talk to or listen to or respect. And because I've done a lot of work in this region and across the state that is collaborative in nature, that basically, the basic philosophy of collaboration in public policy is, everyone who comes to the table, they have some kind of a legitimate concern. Even those protesters in Redmond, they are feeling legitimate suffering. I may not agree with the way that they're expressing it or their policy, proposals, but there are legitimate interests all around the table on all sides of an issue. And Phil Henderson, instead of trying to get people together and tease out, what people's legitimate interests are and how we can reconcile them with each other and reach win-win agreements, he likes to foster a further division and divisiveness. He fans the flames when there is a division. We've seen this in the way that the county has dealt with permitting for marijuana production operations. Just basically only listening to one side and giving it to the other side so that you reinforce your friends, who your friends are. It's I would say that this is very similar, in my opinion, to the way that our president functions. It's very divisive. So those are two ways that I would say I differ from Phil Henderson stylistically, and that kind of, if your style is different, that drives everything. One other thing I would say is, after watching Phil Henderson in action in various commission meetings, is there are many good ideas that come to our community from partners, from staff, that he drags through protracted deliberation. I could name hundreds of things: food waste composting at the landfill, the Skyline Village affordable housing project in Redmond, the the employer-sponsored workforce housing project in Sun River. These are all great ideas. The first was the food composting at the landfill. Great idea from the county staff. The other two were partner-led efforts. The city of Redmond brought this Skyline Village proposal to Commissioner Henderson, and Sun River Resort brought the employer-sponsored dorm, employee dorm to the commission. And Phil Henderson dragged them through meeting after meeting to give him the most obscure, minute details about these proposals before he would sign off on them. And it's, in my mind, it's inappropriate. When you have trusted partners and trusted staff who bring you a good idea, your job is to make a policy level decision, whether it's go, no go, and then entrust them to do it right. Not to try to micromanage. One of the things I've heard is that the Crisis Stabilization Center that has been proposed for the county, that Phil Henderson wanted to ask tons of questions about the water feature that was going to be installed at the Crisis Stabilization Center. So there's a couple of, beyond kind of my positions on things, I think those stylistic differences are fundamental.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. I appreciate your meeting this morning. You have convinced me. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Let me know how I can help.
That there are a number of ways to help the campaign.
Thank you.
And Phil, I hope that when you make your closing remarks, you will enumerate some of those ways to help. Okay, next up is Nancy. Take it away, Nancy.
Good morning. Thanks for being here, Phil, and for running for Deschutes County Commissioner. I am excited to have you on our board and representing us. I was just wondering, have you talked to Tammy? This is to the general, like to kind of, this came into my mind when you were talking about how do you reach the Republican voters in the general election. But have you reached out to Tammy Bainey and to get her endorsement? I know where I go horseback riding, there are Republicans out there, and they really liked Tammy, and a lot of their friends liked Tammy. So I think they would trust her opinion. And then secondly, I forget his name, Cross, the gentleman that just asked how we can help. I will do the ask, but one of the ways that we can help is if you go to votephilchang.com, you can donate to his campaign. I'm out putting signs up throughout the county. Would love to have more signs to put out there for Phil, and if we have more money and maybe he can buy me some more signs. Yeah. So there you go.
And you can sign up for if you'd like a sign as well at the website. Thanks, Nancy. Okay, Tammy Bainey. I will say that Tammy Bainey is one of my heroes. I mean, she. If you look back in the history of Deschutes County at effective, reasonable, moderate elected officials, Tammy Bainey is right up at the top of that list. Ben Westland, for any of you who lived here for a long time, if any of you watched, Ben Westland make his migration from moderate Republican to independent to moderate Democrat, and win the state, win a statewide role as the treasurer for Oregon before he contracted terminal cancer. I mean, these are people who I believe reflect the best of Central Oregon and are true reflections of what our region is about. This is a very purple place, and we have a lot of moderate, pragmatic problem solvers here. And I have talked with Tammy, and I have Tammy's support, although she cannot give me a public endorsement. And I think, I guess when I say I have Tammy's support, my hesitation there, and I hope you all will keep this in mind as well, and not necessarily say to people, oh, Tammy Bainey said she supports Phil Chang. She is, her current role is as the executive director of the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council. And her board for that organization is made up of county commissioners and city councilors. So she cannot, in that position, take public stances on different candidates because she will have to deal with the repercussions of who eventually gets elected when those people get on her board at COIC, and that could really impact her effectiveness in that role. I will say that Tammy had a couple things about Tammy. Tammy was essentially cast out by her own party in 2018. The county Republican Party chose to run a challenger to her in the primary in 2018, and so she feels like, in some ways, she feels like a public official without a party, without a home. I don't think that she's ready to switch sides yet, but she's definitely kind of adrift in a lot of ways. Now, I agree. I absolutely agree with your point, Nancy, that there's a lot of goodwill for Tammy Bainey, And I've been trying to figure out how to tap that goodwill for Tammy Bainey without kind of like trying to say, hey, Tammy's on my side, because that puts her in an awkward position. So what I think I'd like to do is I just did a couple minutes ago, is express admiration for Tammy and kind of talk about her as, as a role model for me. If I get to serve as a county commissioner, I would like to be a county commissioner like Tammy Bainey, like Ellen Unger, who, sit squarely in the middle and try to pragmatically problem solve and listen to everybody. And if you have any suggestions on how to affiliate myself with Tammy without affiliating myself with Tammy, I would love to hear them.
What I will do is, once we get into the general, is ask these, where I go horseback riding, ask them where they met Tammy, because it was he told me it was at some meeting, or I forget what it was, and I'll see if he can invite you, or see if you can get see if I can get you into that location, wherever that was. But
that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, there's got to be splinter groups. I mean, the county party is really, really on the extreme fringe right now, but there's got to be splinter groups out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nancy and Phil. Next up, I want to read a question from the chat before we go to Gloria for her second question. This is from Connie, who says, I get a sense that Phil Henderson would have no problem with continuous strip malls from Bend to Redmond along Highway 97. So Phil, what is your vision for growth in Deschutes County?
Thank you for that question. That's the question that I spent months and months preparing for before COVID-19. My vision for growth in Deschutes County, to take a step back, just to catch up with all the people who have moved here in the last few years, and the projected, we'll see what actually happens, but the projected population growth in our community, like for 2021, 2022, just to catch up, we need to build thousands of homes in Deschutes County. What we build and where we build it will have huge implications for affordability, traffic congestion, loss of open space, and infrastructure. So what I believe we need to do is follow a pattern of development that uses land as efficiently as possible. That means we need some multifamily housing, at least, whether it's sprinkling in some duplexes and triplexes into a development, or whether it means building big condo or apartment buildings. So we need to use land efficiently. We need to site new development in places where it's most cost-effective and efficient to extend our existing infrastructure out to. We need to do more mixed-use development. So we, mix shopping and employment and housing and schools all together, so that the distances that people need to travel for, to get to school and work and shopping and all other, other services is as short as possible. And then we need to fill in that space, that mixed use space, with transportation options, with bike and pedestrian corridor pathways, with bus routes and things like that. So to create that new form, that new development pattern, it sounds like a city, and it is a city. And so I really picture our future growth in Deschutes County mostly occurring through expansions of existing urban growth boundaries. We may see, in some of our unincorporated population centers, like Tumalo, like Sun River, like Terrebonne, we may see places that are not yet incorporated as cities start to look more like cities. But those, I mean, I would picture future development being concentrated either on the edges of our existing urban growth boundaries, our existing cities, or building out those existing population centers, and not a lot of new subdivisions being built out in the rural parts of the county. And that the tools that the county could use to accomplish this, to support this new urban form, this new pattern of development are, they are a key partner with cities in urban growth boundary expansion. They are they control rural land use outside of urban growth boundaries. So Phil Henderson has taken that as an opportunity to push taking away exclusive farm use zoning protection of a lot of our open space. I would say we should not be doing that. We should not be spending a lot of time challenging the state land use planning system. Instead, we should redouble our efforts to help the cities expand their urban growth boundaries and make those processes happen as smooth and fast as possible. There's some kind of specific things that the county is considering right now. Rural ADUs are basically people who own a rural property wanting to build a little cottage or something next to their house so that they can put their older family member or their kid that has come home from college that doesn't have a job because of the COVID-19 recession. That there's I think that rural ADUs are reasonable, and those are something that we should be doing. And the county is working with the state on making that policy change. So there's a couple of places where the current county commission has been pushing on land use that I would support, but the overall emphasis on trying to make it possible to build rural subdivisions in what's currently exclusive farm use zone land, I do not support.
Thank you, Phil. So before we go to the next question, it is getting close to 10 o'clock. Well, I'm perfectly happy to stay here. I don't know whether Phil can stay longer in case there are more questions.
I could stay for another half hour if people want to stick it out.
Okay, we've got a couple of hands still up, but before we go to the next question, there's one question about ways to help, and before folks drop off, perhaps after 10 o'clock, one of the big questions was, how can you help Phil? And I think nobody can answer that better than Phil's campaign manager, who wrote this. There are ways to volunteer. We have phone banks twice a week, 6 to 8 on Monday and 5 to 8 on Thursday. You can sign up on his website, votephilchang.com. You can host a lawn sign. You can get your neighbors and friends to host signs. You can become a vote captain and get 10 pledges to vote for Phil. You can share Phil's posts on social media. And if you're a writer, you can write a letter to the editor. We can't go door to door for lit drops or canvassing anymore, but that doesn't mean there aren't ways to volunteer. So that was an unpaid promotion channeled through me from the campaign manager. So let's move quickly to the next question. And let's see. Okay, next up is Gloria again. Take it away, Gloria.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Phil, for being here. And I'm going to pass because this most recent comment that was picked up in the chat addresses the big question that I have. And that is, because there are other online appearances with you, Phil, to me, it seems that we have the opportunity to build the Phil campaign into the future after this primary election. That's the one that we're looking at. And so the idea that all of us have an opportunity to step up and become a part of what I call the campaign core for Phil. And I just had to say that because I think there's a lot of energy here, a lot of good ideas, and I hope that we can capture it and continue into the fall election and take you into that office where we really need you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gloria. Yeah, I don't want to count any chickens before they're hatched, but I do hope to win this primary, and then the really big project of winning the general election starts. And you know, this is a partisan race in Deschutes County. Deschutes is one of the few counties where county commissioner is a partisan seat where you have to affiliate. And there's only one Democrat who has won a county commissioner seat in Deschutes County in the last 25 years, and that was Alan Unger, who was unseated by Phil Henderson. So demographics are changing. This is a very winnable race, but it is going to take a big push, a lot of effort, and a lot of help for us to win in November. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Let's go next to Dave Shirley. You're on, Dave.
Hi, Phil. How you doing? I'm concerned about the lack of coronavirus education in Redmond. I went to get some blood work done last week. Since I'm over 70, I got masks, gloves, works. But aside from the healthcare workers I saw, most people I saw on the street were walking around with no protection. Why don't we see like Mayor Endicott come on Central Oregon Daily with a PSA asking people to take precautions? I think we've been pretty lucky so far, but that doesn't mean we'll continue to be that way. A personal message from George might bring the pandemic home to our city.
Yeah. Dave, are you a resident of Redmond?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Have you had any communications with the mayor about this?
No, I haven't. I should.
I haven't spoken with George in a couple months, but he made some comments. I mean, he made some very thoughtful comments about the first protest in front of City Hall. That I don't know if he would really push this issue. But I mean, I think he's at least somewhat sympathetic to the public health approach to this issue, and I mean, maybe as your mayor, he just needs encouragement.
He needs to have something more personal to talking to the people of Redmond. That's just something on the news that he briefly says, But yeah, I think I will talk to him.
Thank you. Yeah, I think he would be a great messenger. There are, I mean, the other, kind of talking political strategy. The other thing I would suggest is you write to him and all the city councils, the whole city council in Redmond, and I think that there will probably be people who step up to that. I mean, I know John Bullock is, he's been trying, like on his social media stream, he's trying to be a very public supporter of the stay-at-home measures because he believes that they are really helping.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we have one more question in the queue. This is from Skipper Lay again. So hang on. All right, Skipper, go ahead.
Thank you. Can I make a comment instead of a question? I think this is a comment in terms of where perspective comment. Early on, before this is pre-virus time, there's a group there has been for a long time now, Progressive Vets group in Bend. There's a parallel Progressive Vets group in Redmond. The Bend group had Phil as our first commenter come and visit with us about his campaign. I think pretty shortly after it was kicked off. At the end of what he said, blah, 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 not to say that's a negative, that's a positive, your blah, blah, blahs, but at the end of that, the money, he said, the question of taking campaign donations, the answer was yes. The money, cash, started flowing across the conference room table like I've never seen that group do before. So I feel like it was a good kickoff. If you need an enthusiastic backing from a bunch of people, that would be those people. And I think the Redmond group, not speaking for them, but just myself, impression is they're very much aligned the same way. So thanks a lot. Thanks for the comment.
Thank you, Skipper. I would love to meet with that group or do this kind of a video conference with that group if they're interested.
Okay, great. There was one comment, in case those of you who aren't following the chat, about Redmond, suggesting you might also want to contact Keith Witkowski, who is the city manager, who's generally very responsive, and that might help getting more word out to the citizens of Redmond. With that, even though I had some questions, we're now at 10:06. So Phil, why don't you give us some closing remarks, and we'll call this one. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you all again for making this time to join me today. I hope you heard some things that align with your values and interests. That is my goal as a candidate. It's to represent our community and represent all of the people in our community effectively, and with respect for their concerns and needs. I guess I didn't prepare closing comments today, but I would just say I have a history of public service. I know how local government works and can hit the ground running if I am elected to this position. I have a collaborative approach, which I think is really desperately needed in our local government, in our county commission right now. And I would very much appreciate your consideration for the upcoming election. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Thank you to all of you who joined us this morning with Phil. And I feel like I really need to put in one last plug, even though you've heard it. We really need to get Phil Chang elected to the county commission. So please, please go to votephilchang.com, go to his Facebook page. Yes, this is the primary, not the general. Please donate. The fact is, early money in a campaign is really, really important to get things rolling. And you can donate today, and you can donate around the general election. You're allowed to donate more than once. And you can do that all the other ways that you can help with him. You can phone bank, you can work for him. Maybe you'll even get a chance to go outside and talk to people by the time this happens. I wouldn't hold my breath, but it's possible. In any case, please do support Phil. Thank you, Phil, for coming on with us. And I think we'll close it up now. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.